I watched the Emmys and I was very surprised to see immediately what was going on with regard to charity for the Boys and Girls Club. Can you break this out and then maybe we can have a little like, was this a good thing or not good thing debate?
Yeah, George. So I also watched the Emmys, not all of it. Full transparency, but great night if you're fans of The Pit or Adolescence. Getting right into it, George, I think something we wanted to talk about on the podcast was that Emmys host Nate Bargatze pledged $100,000 to the well-known charity Boys and Girls Clubs of America. But George, here's the catch. That $100,000 pool would decrease over time for celebrity speeches that went over. And for celebrity speeches that fit well within the allotted time, they would add money to the fund. So a little bit of gamification of donation scheming here, getting the celebrities involved. You have celebrities saying, oh my gosh, like the children, right? It was kind of a fun ploy, I guess. George, the tally dropped $60,000. They lost 60K by the end of the night, George, but all was well because Bargatze ultimately gave $250,000 and CBS itself added 100K to that total, bringing it to 350 in total donated. George, we also took a look at the Google search trends and results, and the Boys and Girls Club is getting saw a record high amount of attention for a single weekend, right? Clearly a lot of eyeballs and attention going to the cause. However, George, not everybody is happy. Some think that this kind of gamification cheapens the actual work and issues of organizations like this. So, George, anything at the top? And then I want to push us into a little bit of a debate here.
I want to go into it and go back and forth on, where did you initially feel? But I have been effectively just sort of watching the news, scanning, and the initial back and forths that I've seen on LinkedIn really surprised me. So I just want to sort of play out the pro con. I'm going to take the side that this is a terrible thing and should be avoided at all costs. Shame on you. Insert, outrage here. And you're going to take the other side.
I'll take the other side.
All right.
All right. Who wants to start, George?
I will start with general outrage in effect that philanthropy is not a gimmick and should not be used, especially when we're talking about taking care of our children in this sort of gamified spectacle on television. What say you?
I totally hear that, George. I would counter, though, that this spectacle did, at topmost level, generate $350,000 for the cause, and clearly a lot of attention, right? Having all those celebrities in the room thinking about Boys and Girls Clubs of America did donate ultimately through their speech giving or not giving, and well as the hosts and CBS's generosity, $350,000, which is $350,000 more for the Boys and Girls of Boys and Girls Clubs in America.
So, sure, the money happened, but I want to talk about the net effect of effectively aligning philanthropy with guilt and shame and saying, hey, you're being penalized. A person who, by the way, is having their 45 seconds of spotlight to talk about their achievements, right? We're publicly broadcasting that philanthropy is about shame. How dare you take money away in this public theater where everyone is sort of watching and realizing that philanthropy is here to guilt us into a behavior?
Yeah, George, I think the guilt piece is one thing, right? I don't particularly feel any degree of sadness for the celebrities that felt guilty for going along in their speeches, George. But I think on the onset, right, I think that philanthropy for a long time has kind of been stuck in a rut, right? Kind of high minded, very intellectual, very scientific, very philosophical, careful, meticulous planning. There's an ethos to philanthropy, George, that I think in some ways just takes the fun out of fundraising. And I think that events like this are a way for the public to feel engaged, to raise money, raise awareness. So many people probably went back home and thought, what do the Boys and Girls Clubs of America do? Or, hey, I used to volunteer with them. What a great organization. I'm so glad they got that stage. So, George, I get the guilt thing, but I think when we start pigeonholing how nonprofits are allowed to fundraise, um, we're limiting their potential. And George, I'll also add, there is no way this happens without the explicit endorsement, participation, and support of the Boys and Girls Clubs in America. So take that for what it's worth.
I worry that perpetuating this just leads to this sort of philanthropic Hunger Games where it is out for entertainment and a sort of arena of countdown clocks and making trivial the serious work that nonprofits do in the field. And this sort of contest game has no space in the philanthropic world. And so as this continues, is like, oh, their ratings were up. Yeah, they got 7.4 million viewers and all this attention. Like attention for attention's sake is not always a good thing, especially if, again, we're watching some sort of philanthropic Hunger Games.
Yeah, George, I think that's definitely a more cynical take. The reality is, money was never at stake here. They were always going to donate a large amount of money, right? Like it's all for fun, and I think went to a good cause. And a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And I think in this moment of, quite frankly, attacks, George, on NGOs in America, increasingly stringent rhetoric against NGOs and nonprofits, and decreases in funding, I think we're not really in a position to be policing how nonprofits do their fundraising. So I think all around a great effort from the organizers and the organization itself.
All right. I hope some of those voices maybe were in the back of your head. Like, maybe it was cringy when you first saw it. Thank you, Nick, for making these points. And, it definitely elicited a lot of reactions from people. They're like, oh my gosh, how dare you take money away? But it engaged and it brought, entertainment and impact. And I don't think that is a net bad thing. And it increased the size of the box of creative efforts that can support the various charities and the work that they do. So well done.
Yeah. Thanks, George. I do want to quickly add something. There is a wrong way to do fundraising on TV. I grew up as a kid, right, with Jack Black walking around like, Haiti, like raising money and stuff. And, that's a little bit more complicated, right? I think I don't want to, there's definitely like kind of like a poverty porn critique that can be made, but I don't think that critique is applicable to this. So now speaking out of character, I do think it was totally worth it. I don't think it was exploitative. Acknowledging though, there is an exploitative way to do television fundraising. So that's what
yes, the sort of the sad history of flies in the eyes, philanthropy is definitely documented and has extreme downside when you are sort of creating victims of the people you are helping. So I enjoy the conversation, but ultimately sometimes worry that like when it's just the sort of backlash for the sake of it didn't pass your purity test, that future groups, creatives that are like, how can we bring philanthropy in this, ultimately just steer clear because it's frankly not worth all of that heat of scrutiny when you try to do something creative, when you try to do something new, you stifle innovation in, absolutely an area that needs it and could also use more support. So I also, in the back of my mind, worry when that critic's voice gets louder and louder out there and they're like, well, guess what? Never again shall we do something as bold as donate to a charity in an entertaining way.
Yeah. I happen to agree, George.
All right, friend, what else do we have?
All right. Our next story, George, is from Nonprofit Pro. And George, I think it's important we acknowledge that the volunteer match idealist merger has officially happened on the front end. They have now one platform, right? So we now have one unified hub. It's a new website experience. Idealist has officially integrated Volunteer Match into it, creating the largest single online platform for social impact jobs, volunteer opportunities, and community involvement. George, the platform will allow for expanded reach to showcase jobs, volunteer roles, even like graduate opportunities, right? Really kind of tying together different segments of the social impact sector. And I think, George, the consolidation of resources will allow them to build new tools, do new studies, do new reports, expand initiatives like Idealist Days, calls to action, that kind of thing. Like, I think this is definitely a thing where the sum is greater or what is it? The total's greater than the sum, right?
You're really
Combine
summing the total of
forces,
the parts
create
here,
something
aren't
new.
you?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I've switched my metaphors, but yeah, exciting news.
And also a shout out to the technical efforts involved in doing this in such a short order. It was like not more than like what 6, 7 months ago. I think we were talking to Amidar on this podcast about how that had recently happened in late 2024. This is a technical undertaking. Literally, now you go to volunteermatch.org and you are brought to idealist.org/volunteermatch, fully integrated profiles and technical backends, which was a lift. So kudos to the unsung heroes in the tech backside that brought this to bear. Well done.
Absolutely, George. All right, George. That concludes our podcast
Official
today.
conclusion. Hold on, I gotta do a joke. I have a
But
joke.
you have a joke.
Yeah,
Okay.
I figured one out. All right. Hold on. I got it. All right. So why are nonprofit fundraisers so afraid of like the fundraising calendar?
Why are they afraid of the calendar? I don't know, George.
Its days are numbered.
That's pretty good. That's good. That's
Yeah.
that's
Why?
good.
You should be
Yeah,
afraid.
there you go. Damn. Okay.
At the buzzer. He does it. All right. See you
You
next
got
week.
it. See you, George.